Yo, what is up NBA fans? It's Mike here, back with the normal videos yet again. I got my thing fixed, praying, fingers crossed, that it actually stays fixed since I spent a bunch of freaking money to buy it in the first place. But I'm so happy that it's working again. Let me tell you, I was worried. I was really worried that the thing was going to be broke, and because of the BS return policy on the company, it was just going to be straight up $60 down the drain, and that was that. I was worried, but it seems to be working now, so just gotta hope that it keeps working. Anyway, today we are making a video on the Cleveland Cavaliers, because I've been doing a lot of videos on the bad NBA teams in the league right now, so I figured may as well keep the train rolling and do a video about the Cavs, who I think have the worst future of any team in the NBA at the moment. So let me get into why, alright? So let's wind the clock back to 2018. LeBron James has just finished the only 3 years of his career where the Cavs were actually decent while he was on the roster, and by decent I mean they actually surrounded him with a decent cast, aka mainly being Kyrie Irving. Kyrie leaves, they suck ass in 2018, LeBron carries them to the finals anyway because he's just built different, and then LeBron leaves because, of course he leaves, because this team's garbage, why would he want to stay there? So what's the first thing the Cavs do when he leaves? Well, the first thing they do is they sign Kevin Love to a max 5-year contract for some reason. Even though he has not played at an all-star level since like 2016, he has never been a good defender, he has never on the Cavs been as good as he was on the Timberwolves, and he has gotten injured literally like every other day since he joined the Cavs. And I think that's barely an exaggeration. This man honestly may have been injured as often while he's been on the Cavs as he has been healthy. I have no idea what this team was thinking with this contract, but that's what they did. They gave him a max freaking $30 million a year contract to a dude who never plays and isn't worth it even when he is healthy. I honestly think Kevin Love's contract is worse than Tobias Harris's, just because Tobias Harris, first of all, is arguably a better player, and even if he isn't, the dude's not hurt 24/7, so you're not paying him to sit on the bench in a foot cast. Alright? Terrible decision by the Cavs. And then they drafted Colin Sexton, who is alright. I'm gonna sound contradictory here. Colin Sexton had a very underrated season last year, where he was a really good, efficient scorer, and at the same time, he's not as good as Cavs fans might think he's going to be. This dude's not a future all-star, I don't think. But let's get more into that now. So Colin Sexton, terrible defender, not a good playmaker, but they got him as their rookie guy a few years ago. Then over the last few years, they have drafted Darius Garland, Isaac Okoro this year, who looks to be a fantastic defender, and actually was a very good draft decision by them, and Kevin Porter Jr. Also, Cedi Osman started to quote-unquote break out, and he's been very good for the Cavaliers while he's been there, even though the dude is not by any means not by any means like a future all-star or anything. Alright, he's just like a solid enough player. So then, this year, right before the draft where they get Isaac Okoro, again, very good pick, they freaking trade for Andre Drummond. And on one hand, the Andre Drummond trade was fantastic value, because even though Andre Drummond is not nearly like an all-star level player, getting him for Brandon Knight and a second-round pick is a steal, no question, okay? For someone of his talent, that's a steal. However, the Cavs are not making the playoffs with Andre Drummond. The Cavs are tanking. So getting Andre Drummond was actually a terrible deal, because they're not going to be able to trade him this season, most likely, because it doesn't seem like anybody else really wants him. And they're not going to be as bad as they would be without him. So now they've got this dude making $28 million this year who's going to walk at the end of the season because the Cavs, there's two options. He's going to walk, or they're going to give him a big-ass contract, and he's going to stay there, which is arguably even worse. There's no way this Andre Drummond contract works out well. It's a lose-lose situation for the Cavs, because they're not going to trade him, okay? And he's going to keep them from being the worst team in the league, which is bad because they're tanking, okay? Between Drummond and their other guys in their roster, they're not going to be bad enough to get, at the number 1 overall pick, most likely anyway, but they're not going to be nearly good enough to make the playoffs. They're going to be, the 13th seed in the East. So, about as bad as you can be, as bad as you can be as a franchise, because they're not utterly terrible. They're probably not going to draft a future superstar. They're not drafting another LeBron James. They already screwed that pooch. Or probably not even another Kyrie Irving. They're going to draft, solid enough players with, the 5th or 6th pick for the next several years, and they're just going to be stuck in mediocrity with a bunch of young guys. And then Colin Sexton, I don't know what they're going to do with him. Alright, so here's my... Let me stop rambling for a second, just slow it down. Here's what I think the Cavs should do, and what they're probably not going to do, okay? The Cavs need to do anything they possibly can to trade Andre Drummond this season for picks. They need to trade Kevin Love for picks if they can, or even at least a shorter contract. They should probably maybe try to trade Cedi Osman if they can get a first-round pick for him. If not, that's fine. I think, crazy enough, they should trade Colin Sexton for a very high first-round pick or a better young player. Okay? Now let me explain why. First of all, the Andre Drummond one's super obvious, like I just said. Kevin Love, again, he's not doing anything for you. He's made it clear he doesn't want to be there. Get him out of there, alright? Cedi Osman, very, solid enough young player, but he doesn't really have star potential by any means. And he is under contract for the next 4 seasons, so it's just, Cedi Osman is also, I have no idea if his name is Cedi or Chetty. I'm sorry. I just have no clue. But, if you can get a first-round pick for him, or someone younger with more potential, then do it. If not, there's no harm in keeping him. He's on a pretty good contract. He's on a pretty solid contract, so, there's no, a desperate need to get rid of him. Keep him or trade him for a first, doesn't matter. Colin Sexton is only under contract through the end of 2022, okay? And it is a team option. Now, Colin Sexton is going to put up pretty good numbers this season. He put up pretty good scoring numbers last season. However, he's not a very good playmaker. He's a score-first guard. He's not pass-first whatsoever, and he's a terrible defender. I do not think in the modern NBA that Colin Sexton is going to be an all-star one day. I think he's somewhere between Terry Rozier and Kemba Walker in terms of what he is as a talent. He's not the worst playmaker ever, but, he's a score-first guard who can't play any defense and doesn't contribute much of anything outside of scoring. That dude's not an all-star. However, some teams may believe he is an all-star and may give you a high first-round pick for him because they're desperate. I would say you try to trade Colin Sexton now, because what's going to happen in a year or two is Colin Sexton's going to want that max rookie extension, and the Cavs are either going to give it to him and he's not going to be worth it, or they're not going to give it to him and he's going to leave, or some other team is going to offer him a bigger deal and he's going to leave for nothing. So try to trade Colin Sexton, build around Darius Garland and Isaac Okoro and Kevin Porter Jr. That's what the Cavs should be doing. Okay? Now here's what I think the Cavs are going to do. I think they're not going to be able to trade Drummond. I think they're not going to be able to trade Kevin Love. I don't think they're going to trade Colin Sexton. I think they're going to have to give Colin Sexton a big old contract. I think Andre Drummond and Kevin Love are eventually going to leave for nothing. And I think this team's going to keep being the 8th or 9th seed, the 9th or 10th seed in the East. You know what, not even that high. They wouldn't be that close to the playoffs. They're going to keep being the 11th or 12th seed in the East for the next 5 years, if not lower. But they're not quite going to be the 15th seed because they have enough players who are okay enough that they're not going to be the worst team, and they're probably not going to get that number 1 overall pick. Meanwhile, they're young guys because Colin Sexton takes up so much of the ball, and this year Andre Drummond's going to be hogging the ball too. He's going to be taking away shots. Cedi Osman just had a very good season. He's going to want his shots. You know who's going to get their shots taken away from them? Darius Garland, Isaac Okoro, and Kevin Porter Jr. The guys who need these shots to be getting better are not going to get them. Okay? And they're going to develop slower and less than they would on a team where they were really the ones being built around. And therefore, their potential is going to be lessened, or at least slowed down, in my opinion. Now, maybe I'm looking too much into this, maybe it's not going to be that big of a deal, but this is just what I think is going to happen to this team. I just don't think they're going to be good for a very long time. If nothing else, the Cavs roster since the year 2000, have not shown any level of competence. Okay, at least since drafting LeBron James, they have not shown any level of competence whatsoever. Okay? They had LeBron for how many years? And 3 of those years he had talent around him. 3 of those years. 2015, 16, and 17. Those are the only 3 years this team was like legitimately with LeBron should have been good enough to make the finals or contend whatsoever. The only reason that they were considered like a contending team all the other years is because LeBron James just carried them on his back. It's not because they did a good job surrounding him with talent. Terrible organization, and I just don't believe that they have the brains to make this work. I think they're going to botch it, and I think they're going to keep being really bad until they luck into another superstar. I think that's what's going to happen for the Cavs. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but as of right now, I don't see any team in the league that has a worse future than the Cleveland Cavaliers. The only team you can really make the argument for is the Clippers if they screw it all up this year and everyone leaves. That's the only other team I think compares to them. So yeah, another depressing video. You're welcome. If you disagree with me, let me know why in the comments, as I'm sure you will. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it, and thank you.